Okay, there's one thing I think we are missing from this to-do manager, and this is a simple search. So let's start now by creating this. All of the tasks that we have titles and descriptions. And let's say that you have 100 tasks. It wouldn't be very effective to go through the whole list when you're looking for one specific task. So let's add a search. The first thing we need to do is to do some changes in the views.py. So we want to have this in the task here. So views.py in the task app. We can begin by importing one thing from Django. So from django.db.models import q. And this is something we need to do to make a little bit more advanced queries. Then below the front page we can create a new view called search. Pass in request parameter. And then usually when we search we are going to use a get parameter. So for example query equals test. So then we want to get this here or this from the URL based on this name. And to do that we say query equals request.get with capital letters .get query, and the default value will now be just an empty string. So if this isn't for example, if it's just like this, query will be empty, but this variable will still be set with an empty string. And I can say if query to see if it has been set by the users. Now we say tasks equals task.objects.filter, and we can say title __ I contains, and I means that it's insensitive for capital and lowercase letters, equals query. But what if you now wanted to check if the description has this or the title? That's where the Q comes in. So before here we say Q like that, and now we can pipe this and say Q description __ I contains equals query. So now we will get the tasks where either the title or the description contains the query that we are searching for. And if there isn't a query, we can just say tasks equals an empty list, so that we know this when we are rendering the template. Now we need to render this by saying return render request task /search.html. Now we can pass in the query so that we know what the user has searched for, and also the tasks. So now we get all of the tasks and the query. Great. So before we create the template, we can just add this to the urls.py file. So at the bottom here we say path, and when the path is search / then we want to render the view called views.search. Give it a name, search, and save. Then we can create the template, search.html, and let's just copy a little bit from the front page. So we can copy all of this actually and just remove some of it. Just need to close and the content block, and then we remove the form, and then the title can say search or search results. Now we can say here you searched for query, like that. And below here we will now then print out all of the tasks. So if we go here and say search, then it's empty and there are no. And if I add query here and say first, then we will see the first task there. Cool. And if I remove this again, it's empty. And now we need to just tell this to the user. And that's when this very cool thing from Django comes in, empty. So instead of checking if tasks is set, we can actually loop through this and then add an empty function or tag down here and say p no matches for your query and save. And if I add the query again here now first, then we will see the tasks list. Perfect. And we didn't need to rewrite this here again. We just copy this one line, so we don't have to actually have all of this text all of the time. And that's very great. That's one of the principles of Django actually. So then up in the menu, I want to have a search field. So let's open up nav.html. And below where we print menu, or we can actually change this to do and have it to be an h1 tag. And below here we can say form method equals get. And since this is a search, we almost always just use a get request instead of a post request, because then we can change the URL as we want. The action should not just go to dot, because we don't want to search on the page you are on, but a specific page called URL and search. And then we do not need a CSRF token here, since this is a get request. In here though, we now need one field for the query, so input type search. We're not using type text, but search, because then we get a clear icon we can use. Give it the name of query, and placeholder can be find a task. And then next to this we want a button called search. Close the button, close the form, and save. So if I go back and refresh now, you'll see the to-do title there, and find a task. We can then say hello. Okay, no tasks for that one. What about first? Yes, that was working. Maybe we can just print out how many tasks there are in case there are many. Then that can be a nice thing to know. So if I find search.py, which gave then tasks.length, sorry, count is the best way to count this, which gave results. So if I save now, which gave 1 results. Perfect. And if I just add something on it, 0 results. Perfect. So go ahead and test this out a little bit yourself. That was it for this video. I hope you liked it, and we'll see you in the next video.